Why was the Sega Saturn one of gaming's biggest flops, and why did it end up with some of the best games ever made? Here are 10 hidden gems that prove it. Oh yes, I've been looking forward to this one. Panzer Dragoon Saga. I'll say it up front, this might be my favorite pick for the best RPG of the entire 90s. Full stop, which makes it kind of tragic that almost nobody actually played it. Forget castles and kingdoms and the usual fantasy trappings. This game drops you into a haunting, almost archaeological world full of ruins and forgotten technology. Even now, I can't point to anything else that feels quite like it. You play as Edge, a mercenary whose life gets abandoned after a sudden tragic attack. He ends up bonded with a dragon, and together you set off on a journey that slowly peels back the layers of an ancient civilization and the buried truth behind the world's lost technology. The combat is where it really breaks from something else at the time, real time, but you can rotate around enemies mid-fights, hunting for weak points or dodging attacks. A sense of constant motion turn-based RPGs from that era just couldn't match, and the atmosphere is lonely in the best way. Beautiful, mysterious environments paired with a soundtrack that blends orchestral notes with haunting vocal pieces. And here's the tragedy though, the Saturn just never sold in the West, so by the time this just came out, almost nobody still owned the console to play it on. A game that in my books deserved to be remembered as one of the most defining RPGs of its generation, instead became this quiet, forgotten thing only a handful of people ever experienced firsthand. Original copies or absurdly expensive collector's items now, which almost makes it worse. The rarity gets more attention than the game ever did. Strip that away, and what's left is generally one of the best pieces of storytelling Sega has ever released. My goodness, we get to talk about Magic Knight Rayearth. I grew up watching the anime, both seasons, so playing this feels like coming home. It follows three schoolgirls pulled into Sephiroth who discover they're meant to save it. Wanna know fun trivia? This was one of the very first Saturn games in Japan back in 1995, but the English version didn't arrive until almost 3 years later, making it the very last Saturn game ever released in North America, which is so tragic in a sense. And the localization is a little controversial. The original script is warm and wholesome, start to finish, but working designs, just like they did with Alundra, they rewrote a lot of it, sneaking in jokes that were never there. Some landed fine, and some were a bit uncomfortable to listen to. It seems that the company even got some complaints from people back then. The combat is satisfying with real-time switching between Hikaru, Umi and Fu on the fly, each tied to the fire, water or wind, each with their own combos and magic. Simply put, there's a real rhythm to it once it clicks. The soundtrack deserves a lot of love too. Sega's in-house team scored it, fully synthesized, and it's soft when you're exploring, swelling right alongside the heat of the battle. They couldn't even license the original Japanese opening theme, so they commissioned a brand new one just for this release. And the interface might be my favorite part. Every menu feels hand-painted, portraits radiating personality, and even the dialogue boxes are super special and adorable. Nothing about this game feels lazy. Magic Knight Rayearth uses love from the title screen to the credits, and it's still one of the games I adore completely. And now let's talk about something with a different mood, Deep Fear. If you love Resident Evil, this one might scratch an itch you didn't even know you still had. It came out late, almost too late, right as the Saturn was fading out, so a lot of people never even got the chance to play it, which is a shame, because it might be one of the best looking games on the whole console. You're playing as John Mayer, a former Navy officer, and you get pulled into what starts as a rescue mission at an underwater research station, and it turns into something much darker once the creatures show up. The fixed camera angles, the tight ammo, and the way you're constantly backtracking through the same corridors, hoping you remember where that locked door was. It's all very familiar if you played survival horror games from this era, but there's one twist that it stuck with me. Oxygen. Sections of the station lose air, and suddenly you're not just managing bullets, you're managing your ability to breathe. It's a small addition, but it changes how every hallway feels. The story leans more into science fiction and conspiracy than straight horror, which gives it a different flavor than most of its peers. More the abyss, less zombie outbreak, and the voice acting is delightful. It manages to be even worse than the original Resident Evil in the good way. I love it. It has its own charm.
Mermaid.
It's true. I saw it. It was terrible.
I'm sick of your horror stories.
I'm not lying, right, Chief?
Danny, maybe you should seal off the area.
Well, I took care of the monster.
Maybe you caught depression.
What's the matter, Dubois?
John, it's a facility check. I have this strange feeling.
That doesn't sound too good.
Deep Fear never got the audience it deserved. Limited release, console on its way out, bad timing all around, but if you ever track down a copy, it's generally a dense atmospheric ride, and one of the last great things the Saturn had to offer.
Sonar tracking device.
Everyone on base, until instructions are given, do not make a sound. Stop all construction work. I repeat, do not make a sound. This is not a drill.
It hit the air unit, but its safety system was on. That was close. But the air system isn't working. The pressure's dropping. There's a threat the big table could be flooded. Commander, the Seafox missile hatch is...
What?
This is an ROV picture. The Poseidon could be launched at any moment. Someone is operating it from inside.
Nuclear terrorists?
Let's talk about Die Hard Arcade. There's a naming mess here worth getting into. It's kind of wonderful. In Japan, this game has nothing to do with the movie. It's called Dynamite Deca. Sega simply didn't have the video game rights to Die Hard over there. And what the game it is. This was the first beat 'em up built with fully texture mapped 3D characters, and the moveset is absurd for the genre. Reviewers at the time kept comparing the combos to Virtual Fighter 2. You're punching, kicking, grabbing household items off shelves, picking up guns, and even combining weapons on the fly, like spraying a can of something and lighting it into an improvised flamethrower. It's some over-the-top action movie violence, and it fully commits. Quick-time events string the fights together. Two-player co-op lets you pull off combined special moves, and the bosses are wonderfully ridiculous. A biker, a wrestler, a pair of laser spider bots, all building up to a guy literally named White Fang. The Saturn port even throws in a bonus arcade game, Deep Scan, just for the fun, where you get all the credits. It's so boring, I hate it. Here's a quiet, bittersweet footnote though. This was the very last game made by the Sega Technical Institute before the studio got shut down. The same team behind Sonic 2 and the Comic Zone. They went out swinging on this ridiculous, gorgeous, dumb Die Hard game, and it's honestly a pretty great way to go. First up, Burning Rangers, and I have to say, this one still catches people off guard the first time I describe it because it's not a shooter, not really a fighter, you're a firefighter, well, a futuristic rescue ranger. Buildings are collapsing around you, people are trapped and terrified, and your job isn't to blast your way through enemies, it's to put out fires and carry strangers to safety. There's still almost something tender about that premise, especially next to everything else that Sega was making at the time. The levels are enormous, glowing with color, full of falling debris and flickering flame effects that push the Saturn about as far as it could go. It doesn't always hold together, the frame rate dips when things get busy, the camera has a mind of its own, and finding survivors in these sprawling structures can turn into a maze if the game's voice-guided hints don't quite land. I remember getting turned around more than once, just wandering through smoke, trying to follow a voice that wasn't always as clear as it thought it was. But when the music kicks in, bright, hopeful, triumphant, and you scoop another survivor, and it just clicks why this game means so much to people who found it. It never treats you like a hero swinging a sword, it treats you like someone showing up for other people on their worst day. That's rare, that's the kind of idea only Sega in that specific reckless era would have greenlit. Rough edges and all, Burning Ranges earns its spot as one of the Saturn's most singular, quietly moving games. And it's a technical achievement as well. The game looks amazing and has nice physics.
Detected. Reaction on view sensor. February chamber fully loaded. Transfer unit setup completed. Good luck.
Oh look, it's Guardian Heroes, and this one is just pure joy. Take a classic side-scrolling beat 'em up, smash it together with a full-on RPG, and then let treasure loose on it. And this is what you get, a complete, glorious chaos. On the surface, it's a brawler, you're walking down a path, punching your way through whatever's in front of you, but there's a surprising amount of going on underneath. Your characters actually level up, learning new abilities, get customized to fit however you want to play. It's got the pull that a normal brawler just doesn't have. The combat itself is fast, loud, and full of personality. Every character plays differently. Magic and special moves fly across the screen constantly, and the battlefield has multiple planes you can shift between mid-fights, so there's this added layer of positioning most games in the genre never bother with. What really surprised me though was the branching story. The choices you make actually send you down different paths, different stages, different endings for a beat 'em up that's almost unheard of, and it makes replaying the game feel worthwhile instead of repetitive. You can feel Treasure's fingerprints all over this thing. The sprite work is bursting with personality, the bosses are delightfully over the top, and the soundtrack refuses to let the energy drop. If I'm honest, the screen can get a little insane. Explosions, spells, half a dozen of characters are all fighting at once. It's a lot to track, but that's kind of the point. Guardian Heroes doesn't want calm, it wants chaos, and it commits to that completely. Whether you're playing solo or with friends piled onto the couch, it's one of those games that just refuses to be boring. Alright, this one is special. Princess Crown is an Atlas game directed by George Kamitani, made by the same internal team that would later break off and form Vanillaware. If you have played Odin Sphere or Dragon's Crown, you can already see the roots of that studio's entire visual identity sitting right here, years even before they had a name. The story follows the princess who gets pulled into an adventure that grows far beyond anything she expected out of royal life, and eventually lets you control multiple characters, each giving a different angle on the same larger story. Mechanically, it blends side-scrolling action with RPG systems. Fights reward good timing over mashing buttons, and you're unlocking multiple abilities and gear while exploring a really gorgeous fantasy world. And I do mean gorgeous. Every character is hand animated with an insane level of care. Backgrounds feel their breathing, and there are frames in this game that look like concept art brought to life. And here's the thing, right? Though Princess Crown never got an official release outside of Japan, not on the Saturn, not even on the later PSP or PlayStation 4 ports for decades, if you didn't read Japanese, you basically couldn't play it. But that finally changed. A dedicated team of fan translators spent years chipping away at this, and an English patch is now out there, ready to download and apply yourself. So if you have only ever admired this game through screenshots, now it's the best moment in its history to actually play it. Go find the patch, grab a copy of this game, and see for yourself why this quiet Saturn exclusive ended up shaping an entire studio's future. Now let's talk about Legend of Oasis, known as the story of Thor 2. Outside North America, back in 1994, a tiny studio called Ancient put out Beyond Oasis on the Genesis. And Ancient wasn't just any studio, this was Yuzo Koshiro's team, the same team behind the sound and design work that made Streets of Rage, the beat 'em up everyone still worships. So naturally, when they turned towards a Zelda-like adventure, it came out incredibly gorgeous, fast, full of fighting game combos nobody expected out of an action RPG at the time. Legend of Oasis is the prequel they made next, this time for the Saturn, and it clears an already high bar. You follow Leon, a young warrior who discovers a magical armlet that lets him summon elemental spirits, fire that burns obstacles, water that opens new paths, and each one changing how you explore instead of just how hard you can hit things. Combat keeps the same fighting game DNA, fast, responsive, full of real combos that made Leon feel like a martial artist instead of a sprite bumping into things. And the visuals are beautiful, especially on the console. Hand-drawn sprites backed with animation, bosses that fill the entire screen, backgrounds so detailed you want to stop and look around. Koshiro's soundtrack ties into together perfectly, drifting between adventurous and intense without feeling out of place. If there's a downside, the adventure ends faster than you'd like, and a few puzzles hide their solutions too well. But short or not, Legend of Oasis proved Ancient could follow Genesis Classic with something even more ambitious, and it's still one of the Saturn's most gorgeous, most underrated action RPGs. Oh look, it's Dark Savior, which might be the strangest, most overlooked game in the whole list. It comes from Climax Entertainment, which has the most questionable studio name, but I like it. A lot of the same people who made Landstalker, which I adore that game. And if you played that game, the isometric look will feel instantly familiar. But Dark Savior has a trick up its sleeve that Landstalker never even attempted. You play as Garion, a bounty hunter escorting a dangerous prisoner aboard a massive flying fortress. Depending on choices you made early on, the entire story branches, not just the ending, the actual journey. Different characters show up, different events happen, and sometimes even different villains entirely. That's what makes it so ambitious. Most games with branching paths just change how the story wraps up. Dark Savior changes the whole world getting there, which encourages you to play more than once just to see what you've missed. Gameplay wise, mixes exploration, platforming, some puzzle solving, and action and combat. In the way you fight, it's actually really interesting. And like a lot of isometric games from this era, judging exactly where you're going to land on a jump can be a little rough at first. Give it some time and your brain adjusts to the perspective. The game is visually colorful and full of personality. The environments are detailed and memorable. The monster designs and all, and the soundtrack does a great job of giving each location its own identity. It's not flawless though. That same camera and the controls gives the game its charm, also makes the platforming harder than it should be, and the combat never gets especially deep, but even with those rough edges, Dark Savior is fascinating. Its branching structure was years ahead of its time, and honestly not many games have tried anything quite like it since. Dragon Force, this one still surprises people who think Sega Saturn is just another arcade box. It's a strategy RPG. Here you're running an entire kingdom. You pick a ruler at the start, each with their own personality and their own reasons for going to war, and from there on you're recruiting generals, managing territory, building an army, and slowly pulling the whole continent into your sphere of influence. It sounds like a lot, and it is a lot. This isn't a game you finish in an afternoon, but battles, or what people remember, instead of taking turns, you get these real-time clashes with hundreds of tiny soldiers charging across the screen, while generals unleash these huge screen-filling special attacks. I still think about how it felt watching that for the first time. This little console somehow threw many sprites at once without falling apart. It doesn't look like anything else from that generation. Outside the battles, there's a lot of strategy in deciding where to strike, who to bring into your ranks, how thin you're willing to stretch your defenses, and it's still all wrapped in gorgeous pixel art, expressive portraits, fluid animation, a soundtrack that makes every skirmish feel like it matters. It asks for patience, the campaigns are long, and the systems take a while to click. And newcomers might feel a little lost early on, but once it clicks, it really clicks. Even now, decades later, I can't point to another game that blends grand strategy and RPG progression quite like this one, unless we're talking about Crusader Kings, but that's different. Dragon Force earned its cult following the hard way. You should play this game, and you shouldn't read about any meta to min-max things. It takes the fun away from this game. The Saturn wasn't held back by bad games, it was held back by everything else. It launched at the wrong time, was difficult to develop for, it cost more than the PlayStation, and Sega's marketing and retail relationships fell apart, but those same circumstances meant the developers who stuck with it pushed the hardware in incredible ways, leaving behind a library that deserved far more attention than it ever received.